My Lords, it's a pleasure to follow that rousing speech, to compliment the committee as has been widely and rightly done on its report. Thank the Noble Lord, Lord Reesdale, for his clear introduction, and join, I think, almost universally the tributes to Noble Lady Baroness Fuchs for her long-term contributions to horticulture. I should declare that I have an Industry and Parliament Trust fellowship with the Horticultural Trade Association, I think I have to start by reflecting, as pretty well every Noble Lord has, the extreme disappointment there has been in the government response to the committee's report. The HTA, the National Farmers Union, the Workers' Interest Group really are severely disappointed by the government's failure to properly engage with this report, and particularly its failure to acknowledge the need for a horticultural strategy. Now, I want to come back to that Workers' Interest Group, which is a coalition of 9 not-for-profit groups representing and engaging with seasonal horticultural workers. And it's written to DEFRA, pointing out many of the failures relevant to it in the government's response to the committee's report. They represent a failure of basic functions and responsibilities of government. And I'd invite any Noble Lord who's interested, I'd be very happy to share a copy of it. I'm just going to take one example from that. The committee's recommendation 33. The government must publish a review of the seasonal worker route as promised in response to the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration's report of December 2022. And I just note that in that report, the Chief Inspector said the Home Office needs to significantly raise its game. One might say that in regard to lots of things, but we're talking about the seasonal worker scheme at this moment. Now, the government's response says in due course it will publish a review of the scheme's operation from 2020 to 2022. The only published full review of the scheme is of the 2019 pilot, which involved 2,500 visas. We now have 55,000 visas. It's entirely different in scale and nature. But before I get back to that, I first want to address the overall failure of the government response. It reflects a lack of understanding of the importance of the horticultural sector and the need for it to expand. I've just come out of a debate on housing and the environment. If the sterile, bleak housing estates we're now building are to be enhanced, public health to be improved, we need a much expanded, upskilled and valued environmental horticulture sector. Coming to the food point, which has already been powerfully covered by the Noble Lord, Lord Curry of Kirkdale, we need, for a healthy diet, to be self-reliant in vegetables and fruit. About 20 times more fruit and vegetables being grown in the UK than we have now. Now, I want to look at the overall situation very briefly. This is a failure of Labor policy that I started with, but it's also underlying this is a failure of policy to control and ensure a fair market for growers against the power of the big supermarkets and the food manufacturers. They have been allowed and indeed encouraged by government policies over decades to entirely dominate our food system. And behind that is a system of growing vegetables and fruit, what we do grow here. They're outdoor factories where there's huge pressure on these imported workers who come here for 6 months to pick rapidly and accurately. The worker advocates tell me that workers are subjected to significant bullying and abuse in the fields. If they're not seen to be picking fast and accurate enough, after a few hours they're sent back to their accommodation, which is likely to be a caravan which may be housing 6 people, many of whom will speak different languages. They go back every night crying to a caravan that's likely cold, mouldy, so that they see doors without locks, accommodation without locks. They are not supposed to be charged for energy supplies, but they are charged for that. Now, when you see your punnet of strawberries in the supermarket, it's worth thinking about what is behind potentially that punnet of strawberries. About 70% of the workers who come here take out debt to come here. Only 30% of them are confident that they're going to be able to pay that back. Now, for further information on this, I have to cross-reference the Flex report out this month, Bearing Fruit, Making Recruitment Fairer for Migrant Labour. And it's worth saying that it doesn't have to be like this. Countries like the US and Canada have far better models. They have bilateral arrangement with sending countries. Workers come from a handful of countries. I think there's so many things to say, but I'm just going to finish on a reference to this Flex report. The workers they spoke to, 30% of them were from Kazakhstan, 18% from Kyrgyzstan, 10% from Indonesia, 18% from Uzbekistan, also from Tajikistan and Moldova. We are bringing people into this country from around the world, and they are going back to the rest of the world with a very negative impression of the UK, and we're failing to provide ourselves with a horticultural sector that we need.